In this video, we're going to be doing Schrader core removal. A lot of times the tire valves or the Schrader cores in the air conditioning system tend to leak. In years past, we had to take all of the refrigerant out of the system to change the actual Schrader core itself, which was an environmental hazard. The other thing that would happen at that point, we'd have to re-evacuate our system and then refill it with refrigerant once we were done replacing the tire valve or the Schrader core. There are various manufacturers now that have manufactured a tool that will allow us to do that with the system still fully charged, with losing a minimum amount of charge at that point. This is a yellow jacket version of that Schrader core removal tool. And it actually has a couple of different pieces to it. There are two knurled sections. This piece here in particular out at this end is going to be the piece that attaches to the actual air conditioning service valve. The other piece on the other end is attached. The inner portion of this piece is going to go onto the outer portion, and it's threaded on as well. So the first portion here, what you'll actually see is that this actually slides right through the middle of that outer knurled portion. So I'm going to leave that unattached at this point. I'm going to go ahead and hook up this valve onto the air conditioning system. So again, when I come down here on my valve, I'm going to go ahead and attach just by spinning onto the valve itself this secondary piece. I want to make sure that my valve is still pointing upwards. That makes it the easiest to maneuver. Sometimes it's a little bit of a challenge on certain central airs because of the configuration of the service port or valve area. I've got that snug, and once it's snugged up, I've got that in place. You can see at this point it's now attached. The valve is in the open position, which it needs to be to allow this piece to go on in through the middle of this tool. So again, attaching it. Now I'm going to attach the shaft portion, if you will, to the rest of the tool. And again, just snug is fine. And as soon as I've got that snug, I now can put pressure on the back piece here, pulling it in toward the Schrader core itself. This is one of those things, it's a feel application where you get hooked onto the actual core. There's a slot in the front of this piece that gets hooked onto the Schrader core itself. I find it easier to keep applying pressure. So my middle finger here is pushing on this as I'm kind of spinning. If I don't apply that pressure, what I'm going to find happens is I slide off that Schrader core, and sometimes it becomes really, really difficult to maneuver if you let it off that Schrader core. So I keep pushing pressure on it as I'm spinning that counterclockwise. Now, you won't see this, but we're actually starting to take that core out. It's threaded in there, and all I'm going to do is make sure that before I let off on the pressure, I've completely unthreaded that Schrader core. In many cases, what you'll find is if I let off on this many times, this is going to slide out on its own, which should indicate at that point that I have the core now removed. So if you will, the core is out right in this area where my middle finger is located. Once I've got this fully backed out, I'm going to go ahead and shut that quarter turn ball valve to the off position. Now what I can do is I can go ahead and undo this back portion of the tool. I never want to undo this portion because now it's live with refrigerant. There's nothing containing that refrigerant at that point. When I go to pull this out, the actual Schrader core itself is going to be located right in the end of the tool. And I can pull that out. So the actual core itself is now, you can see in the palm of my glove there, that's the actual Schrader core that was in the system itself. So when I remove that core, if I go ahead and turn this valve to the on position, I'm not going to have all the refrigerant in this system leaking out through that portion. What I would do, I carry replacement Schrader cores. Those replacement Schrader cores at that point, I will go ahead and load up into this tool. So I would have a brand new Schrader core, and again, I'm going to outfit that so that it's ready to go into the tool. It just kind of holds in there to replace the core. Now that I have the new core in here, I'm going to put the new core back in. Again, I'm going to snug this back up. I'm going to open my quarter turn ball valve when this is snug. Now I'm going to push in on this stem, and again, keeping pressure on it as I turn it clockwise into the threads. So it threads in. Now, when we reach the bottom of the threads, again, we're going to be snug. We don't have to tighten it like crazy. Just nice and snug is all we're going to need. Once it's snug, I should again be able to back off of this tool, close the quarter turn ball valve, and remove that outer piece. Now that I have that released, I'm going to get a little bit of pressure here. I'm going to slowly turn this on. And what should happen is I get a little bit of burst of pressure, and then that should disappear, which means that we have the core accurately installed. If there's pressure that continues, we turn that valve back off. It means we have to repeat that procedure of putting that valve in. So now we can undo the Schrader core tool, and we have successfully changed our Schrader core on our air conditioner and created a lot less of a hassle. So hopefully now you're going to be able to see how that Schrader core tool basically functions to save us a lot of energy and time on a very common air conditioner Schrader core leaking problem.